Dumelang Sanmonani, and a warm welcome to you all to Our Africa with myself, Matabelo Moloi. Well, this is a show that brings you a wrap-up of the week's leading stories across the African continent. Well, starting off in the DRC, Congolese government spokesperson Lambert Mende has officially announced that DRC's President Joseph Kabila has chosen former Interior Minister Emmanuel Ramazani Shadri as his successor in the upcoming elections. Now, Shadri is the Secretary of the People's Party for Reconstruction and Democracy. Mende stated that he will represent the political party in the presidential elections and that they will rally behind him. Well, the DRC has never known a peaceful government transition since it gained independence from Belgium in 1960.
Il s'agit du camarade Emmanuel Ramazani Shadari, secrétaire permanent du PPRD. Monsieur Emmanuel Ramazani Shadari, notre candidat, est catholique pratiquant.
Le peuple a besoin de la paix. Le peuple a besoin de la reconstruction. Il a besoin du social. C'est ce que nous allons faire. Et nous sommes ouverts à tout le monde.
And our ex-rebel and DRC leader Jean-Pierre Bemba officially launched his bid for the country's presidential seat for the upcoming December elections. Now, Bemba filed his papers at the Electoral Commission offices in the capital, Kinshasa, throwing down the gauntlet to his rival President Joseph Kabila, who's ruled for 17 years. Bemba confirmed that he had a voting card and filed all the papers in order. Well, now it's up to the National Election Board to handle all the applications. Bemba was accompanied by his wife and members of the Movement for the Liberation of Congo, a former rebel group turned political party that Bemba founded.
Oui, je vais vous confirmer que j'ai eu effectivement la carte d'abord d'électeur que j'ai pu obtenir et j'ai déposé tout le dossier au niveau de la commission électorale indépendante. Mais, écoutez, j'avais des inquiétudes par rapport surtout à un nombre important d'électeurs, 6 millions qui n'ont pas d'empreinte digitale. Et deuxièmement, nous avions des questions concernant l'utilisation de la machine à voter. Et c'est ça qui nous a pris beaucoup de temps dans la discussion.
And now moving over to Zim's political news, Zimbabwe's opposition leader Nelson Chamisa insists that he won the country's elections. Chamisa has labeled the results as fraudulent and illegal. Nelson Chamisa says his party is going to be challenging the election results. The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission had announced that ZANU-PF leader Emerson Mnangagwa had received 50.8% of the votes, while Chamisa secured 44.3%.
In terms of what you are saying, what evidence we have V11 forms. We have tabulations at V23 level, at constituency level, and we avail them. We have statistics blow by blow on every account. And ZEC know it. Just to tell you, yesterday, we said to ZEC, let us go constituency by constituency to verify the election result. They ran away. Slaigwana ran away. And he said, no, I have not been permitted to do that. But we said, look, you are the chief elections officer. You are supposed to be able to do that. Not only that, they had results which were being punched into the server. Those results show the accurate results. We don't agree with their tally because their tally is a fraudulent tally. And they know it. These are some of the forms that we have collected, just a sample, just for Harare. They show that discrepancy, and that's how we managed to get this discrepancy. These are ZEC signed forms. And we shall, and we will use them. These are their own forms. We have reports from the police. We have reports because they are not governing alone. We also control a significant part of government. The legal, yes, will do all is necessary to make sure that we pursue the protection of the rights of the people in terms of what they voted for. But in terms of the political movement, we will connect with the people. We will engage the people. This is not a Chamisa vote or a Mnangagwa vote. It's a people's vote. It cannot be massaged by any individual. The will of the people cannot be altered by ZEC, by an individual, by the army, by the police. It cannot be, and it shall not be. The army was not voting in this election. It was the people who voted. And the army has a duty to defend.
And our supporters of Zimbabwe's newly elected President Emerson Mnangagwa have expressed hope that he will steer the country to growth and prosperity. Well, there were scenes of jubilation across parts of Harare after the announcement by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission on Thursday. Mnangagwa's ruling party will maintain control of the government in the first vote after long-time leaders fall Robert Mugabe. Now, election observers from the European Union had lamented military action after unrest broke out when opposition supporters had challenged the slow release of the results. Meanwhile, the Southern African regional bodies endorsed the conduct of the election as free and fair. Their assessments of the election will be crucial to the lifting of international sanctions on a country whose economy collapsed years ago. Well, ordinary Zimbabweans such as Addy, a clerk by profession, is optimistic about the country's future.
Yeah, I think he's the right man because he has been there for quite time, and he knows where the weaknesses are since he's got the experience from the previous event, the previous government. So he knows how to maneuver on all the problems that we have. I just hope he will do well.
Well, President Emmerson Mnangagwa has declared Zimbabwe's elections free and fair. He says he will institute an independent commission of inquiry into some of the issues around the elections, including the violence that led to at least 6 people killed. Well, the opposition has said it will challenge the election results in court. Mnangagwa of ZANU-PF received 2.4 million votes, constituting 50.8% of the total. Nelson Chamisa of the Movement for Democratic Change received 2.1 million votes, constituting 44.3% of the total.
But I've told the nation that I'm going to institute an independent commission to inquire into the issues we have raised. And this independent commission will both be composed by our nationals as well as foreign nationals from outside Zimbabwe, so that it has the full stamp of being an independent commission.
And now addressing the outbreak of violence when opposition supporters challenged the pace of the election results, Mnangagwa said the Zimbabwean electoral process had channels to address grievances.
When the violence incident happened, I directed the Secretary General of my party and the Minister of Home Affairs to engage him, and he was engaged on 2 occasions with regard to our pledge for a peaceful process, and that has happened. With regard to accepting or not accepting the results, Zimbabwe is enjoying democracy. We have introduced comprehensive democracy. Any member, the public or any political party can proceed in terms of a constitution and the Electoral Act to challenge the results in the courts. And I believe that these leaders or individuals or organizations are free, in my view, to approach the courts.
Well, President-elect Mnangagwa also gave a peek into his inbox about his mission to revitalize the Zimbabwean economy.
Zimbabwe is peaceful. We want to leapfrog and catch up with the rest of developing countries, both in SADC as well as outside SADC, so that we catch up with the rest of the developing countries in terms of modernizing and industrializing our own country. And I'm so happy that our people in the diaspora are responding.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has congratulated President Mnangagwa. He added that the Pretoria looks forward to working with Harare's new leadership. Ramaphosa was echoing sentiments he expressed ahead of the elections on the conduct of the Zimbabwe elections, where he pledged to work with the eventual winner. He had also hoped that South Africa would be invited to the inauguration of the new president, as he wished Zimbabweans well. Well, the largely peaceful election was, however, marred by violence, which claimed the lives of 6 people. ZANU-PF spokesperson in the country has also condemned the action.
We do not condone violence, and we strongly regret the unfortunate incidences that took place in Harare, which led to the death of the 6 people and the injury of many others that are in hospital. And our leadership in Zimbabwe has already sent condolences, and we equally do so send condolences to the families of those who lost their lives. And equally, we also say speedy recovery to those of our people who got injured during the skirmishes that took place on Saturday.
Well, Zimbabwean opposition figure Tendai Biti has been charged with inciting public violence and declaring unofficial election results. Well, the court appearance followed dramatic events in which Biti fled to Zambia, denied asylum and handed over to Zimbabwean security forces in defiance of a Zambian court order. Now, the charge of inciting public violence could bring up to a decade in prison, whilst the charge of declaring unofficial election results carries a maximum 6-month sentence. But he was granted a $5,000 bail but must surrender his passport, report to authorities twice a day and not address any political rallies. Now, a statement released by the heads of missions in Zimbabwe of the EU, the US, Canada and Australia has called on Zimbabwean authorities to guarantee his safety and respect his rights. Well, it said diplomats were deeply disturbed by reports of security forces targeting the opposition. Well, earlier, ahead of Biti's court appearance, we spoke to MDC Alliance spokesperson Mr. Lovemore Chukucha, who talked about the mood in the opposition following Mr. Biti's arrest.
I'd like to confirm that Tendai Biti, the leader of MDC Alliance, is in custody in police office hands in Zimbabwe, and currently is waiting to be tried in court in Zimbabwe. Yes, he was deported today, this morning from Zambia, and yesterday he tried to escape the country, and he managed to escape the country, and he went to Zambia, and the Zambian authority they deported him back, and they refused to grant him an asylum, citing that his statements do not stand the ground to be given an asylum, and they say that he's not in danger.
And our incumbent Ibrahim Boubacar Keita will face opposition figure Somalia Chisi in the second round of Mali's presidential elections on the 12th of August. In a statement, in the first round, Keita won 41% of the vote, with Chisi polling 17%. Businessman Diallo came in third with 7% of the votes, while former Prime Minister Sheikh Modibo Diarra completed the top four with 7.46%. Now, voters in the vast West African country had 24 candidates to choose from in the key polls for the region, which still faces a threat from jihadists despite the presence of UN peacekeepers, French troops and anti-terror G5 Sahel force. And our prominent Sudanese activist Winnie Omar is determined to keep campaigning for women's rights. This despite mounting legal problems that she says are aimed at silencing her. Omar was with another woman and 2 men in February when police raided the suburban Khartoum apartment where they were meeting. She was later charged with prostitution under a controversial public law order. She stated that they tried to tell the police that it was a house and it was a normal meeting. They told them that there is no reason for them to break through a window and accuse them of prostitution. Well, despite a protest, officers confiscated Omar's laptop and detained her for 5 days. When a trial began in July, investigators told her she could face more charges, including espionage against the regime. Now, such a crime carries a death penalty, although in early August, Omar stated that she had not been formally charged with spying.
قفز عبر الشباك عدد من رجال المباحث، وفجأة بعد ذاك جمعوا الجيران في الشقة وبدوا يتكلموا عن إنه في ممارسة بتاع الدعارة هنا وغيره، وإحنا بدنا نوضح لهم إنه ده منزل وإنه ده لقاء عادي، وما كنا فاهمين فعلا. البستنول بيستدعي إنه عدد من رجال البوليس يقفزوا عبر الشباك لمنزل فجأة ويبدوا في توجيه اتهامات أو ادعاءات ذات طبيعة زي دي. عندما يتم استهداف الناشطين في حالات محددة، هي رسالة لهم بأنه أنتم مراقبون وستقوم الدولة بقمعكم وستتم فرض شروط الدولة عليكم.
Well, Omar further stated that she's not scared to face the state in court, and she believes the change happens when you stand up for your rights.
أنا ما خايفة من مواجهة الدولة، وعلى استعداد لمواجهتها باستمرار داخل مختلف المحاكم. ده ماشي مخيف بالنسبة لي. المهم بالنسبه لي زي ما قلت انه احنا نتكلم باستمرار وصوتنا يكون عالي ونحاول نوصل الصوت ده لاي شخص ولاي فرد داخل السودان ولمؤسسات الدوله كمان ولاجهزتها القمعيه انه لسنا خائفين وعلى استعداد باستمرار لانه نجيف من اجل حقوقنا ونطالب بها، من انه التغيير بيحصل بالطريقه دي، بيحصل بانه نجيف على مطالبنا وانه نطالب باستمرار وانه ما نتنازل عن حقنا وحقوقنا الشخصيه.
وضع القانون بيفتكر انه الانثى خطر، انه الانثى هي واجبه الاغواء او شغلها او طبيعتها او تكوينها الجسماني هو يؤدي الى اغواء الرجل ودعوة لارتكاب الجريمة. لذلك أنا كنت بسمي الكلام ده عقلية الاسترابة في الأنثى، وقلت أنه كادت الأنوثة أن تصبح جريمة في السودان.
Well, a Kenyan court overturned a 20-year jail term handed to an ivory trafficking kingpin in a case that had been seen as a test of the country's will to take on rampant poaching. Faisal Muhammad Ali, a Kenyan national, was sentenced in 2016 after prosecutors presented him as the head of an organized crime network that spanned African wildlife parks. However, on appeal, the Mombasa High Court rejected the sentence passed by the lower court in July 2016 as unconstitutional. Well, the Kenyan Wildlife Service hailed the landmark judgment against him, which included a fine of 20 million shillings.
We believe that this is a huge setback for our efforts into showing how we're curbing wildlife trafficking. Let us not forget the perpetrator of the trafficking of 2 tons in elephant ivory is still out there, now free amongst us.
Kenyans and Tanzanians marked the 20th anniversary of the Al-Qaeda bombings of the U.S. embassies in their countries that killed more than 250 people, with hundreds of local survivors calling on the U.S. government for compensation.
A survivor and a rescue team member recalls events of August 7, 1998, 20 years since the devastating U.S. embassy bombings that killed 224 people and injured around 5,000 in Kenya and Tanzania.
I heard what I thought were gunshots being thrown at the embassy. But this later turned up to be hand grenades. And what came to mind was that these were but gangsters who wanted to rob the embassy, but it never occurred to me that they were actually terrorists planning a heinous and barbaric act of cowardice. Then I saw a man run from the scene of the shooting towards the heavy traffic. And that's when a huge blast went. And from that day, I have never witnessed or seen light of day again. When such things happen, be it in September 11, be it the Madrid train bombing, be it the train bombing in London, or attacks in Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq, this brings back memories, very painful memories, because seeing innocent lives being lost like a chicken, it's a very sad affair.
Bruce Niehaus, a member of the search and rescue team in 1998, says the devastation was quite great.
So the devastation was quite great. You looked at the Ufundi building, which is on the site here, and it was completely down. I think it was a 7 or 8 story building, and it was reduced to a pile of rubble. And this is the first time, today's the first time I've been on the site, and seeing some of the buildings that are still standing, and actually standing on the site where we spent 4 or 5 days of recovering a lot of the citizens of Nairobi that were victims to the bombing. It strikes you a little different than just reading it. Being back on the site, a lot of memories start coming back.
Kenya has remained under threat from the Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab group based in neighboring Somalia. Al-Shabaab more recently has been targeting Kenyan security force with nearly 100 police officers killed since May 2017. Bureau Report for Worldview.
Well, the Ebola virus outbreak in the DRC has killed 33 people. The outbreak is spreading through 5 health zones in North Kivu province and 1 health zone in Ituri province, which poses geographic and political challenges. Now, the latest outbreak is the 10th in the DRC since 1976. Well, in North Kivu borders Rwanda and Uganda, and trade activity fuels heavy movement across the borders. The DRC flew a team led by Health Minister Oli Ilunga Kalenga to an eastern region hit by Ebola, the country's second outbreak in less than 3 months. The Beni region lies in the heart of a conflict zone gripped by notorious Ugandan-linked Islamist militia called the Allied Democratic Forces.
That event appears to have been a woman who was admitted to hospital around Beni and on discharge had recovered from the original complaint, but on discharge came down with a fever and other symptoms that were clinically consistent with Ebola, and later on 7 of her direct relatives also contracted the disease. We know, for example, that there have been around 20 deaths, but we can't at this stage confirm whether they are all probable or confirmed Ebola cases. We expect, however, that the overall case count will rise in coming days to weeks based on the trajectory of epidemics at this stage in their development. It's good news and it's very bad news. The bad news is that this strain of Ebola carries with it the highest case fatality rate of any of the strains of Ebola, anywhere above 50% and higher according to previous outbreaks. So it's the most deadly variant of the Ebola virus strains that we have. That's the bad news. The good news is that we do have, although it's still an investigational product, a safe and effective vaccine that we were able to deploy last time round. It's going to be a very, very complex operation, as I mentioned earlier, on the scale of degree of difficulty. Trying to extinguish an outbreak of a deadly high-threat pathogen in a war zone reaches the top of any of our scales.
And now drug addiction in Kenya and the rest of Africa is on the rise. This is according to recently released United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime report. Well, the UNODC estimates that internationally 33 million people use opioids, prescription opioids and opiates such as opium and heroin. 2 million of the users are in Africa, with East Africa having 260,000 users. Well, the leading cause of international drug-related deaths was opioid overdoses, which accounted for 3 in 4 deaths, according to the World Drug Report. Well, almost 90% of pharmaceuticals opioids seized, mainly the painkiller tramadol, were in African countries. And Kenyan youth are increasingly getting addicted to cough syrups with codeine, and codeine-based painkillers often sold to them in nightclubs. Lester Davids, a physiology professor at the University of Pretoria, says that Africa is currently experiencing a massive trend of increased use of skin bleaching products, particularly in teenagers and young adults. David says the African market is rapidly expanding as companies are seeking to cash in on the continent's booming youth population.
It's a daily ritual. For 7 years, Toyin has been using a skin bleaching cream. She says it gives her a clear complexion and protects her from the sun. But over time, her skin has become irritated and dark spots have appeared.
This particular cream is okay because if you use other creams, you might get sunburnt. Since I started using this cream, people have been complimenting me. My skin isn't too dark or too light. I keep my natural complexion.
In Africa, the business of skin bleaching is booming despite a growing Black Pride movement championing natural beauty. Women and men buy creams that lighten the skin by reducing the production of melanin. The price of a jar of cream ranges from 2 to 50 euros and can be found everywhere on the continent.
From the poorest to the middle class and to the rich class, they all, a good number of them bleach. In my last research, I found out that when you go to the marketplaces, 6 out of 10 bleach.
Many countries have banned the creams, some of which contain harmful ingredients, including hydroquinone, steroids, lead and mercury. But high demands has led to a booming black market that is almost impossible to regulate. The side effects can lead to skin cancer.
You start to affect not only the upper layers of the skin, but you also affect the deeper layers of the skin to such an extent that at a particular point the whole process becomes reversed. You get much darker areas of the skin, and eventually the skin is destroyed to such an extent that only laser surgery or resurfacing surgery.
The latest trend in skin whitening is by injecting or taking pills that contain glutathione. This antioxidant, used to treat cancer, lightens the skin and is said to be a safer alternative than the creams. It is not illegal, but the long-term effects are still unknown, meaning skin bleaching remains a risky business.
Now, as long as women are not free, we're all not free. President Cyril Ramaphosa said this as he addressed crowds in Paarl in the Western Cape during Women's Day celebrations. On Women's Day 1956, 20,000 women marched to the union buildings to protest past laws.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has called for scourge of gender-based violence to come to an end. He was delivering a keynote address at the National Women's Day celebrations in Paarl.
Discrimination, exploitation, and violence are still present in our society, which, despite the progress that we have made, has not yet fully emerged from our racist and patriarchal past.
The president says women in this country are still oppressed by cultural practices. He says patriarchy remains a defining feature of our society.
Many South African women are still burdened by poverty and oppressed by cultural practices, social convention and prejudice.
Minister in the presidency, Batabile Dlamini, echoed his sentiments.
When a woman says, I don't want means I don't want. I don't love you anymore means I don't love you anymore.
Anti-apartheid activist Sophie de Bruyn said gender-based violence has no place in this country.
Violence has put paid to many women's dreams and aspirations. The spectre of femicide must have no place in South Africa.
Meanwhile, Ramaphosa has saluted women who fought for liberation.
It is on this day that we remember leaders like Winnie Madikizela Mandela, Lillian Ngoyi, Helen Joseph, Rahima Musa, Sophie de Bruyn, Dora Tamana, Betha Gowa, Florence Matumela, Ruth First, Dorothy Zihlangu, Ray Alexandra, Liz Abrams, Dorothy Nyembe.
The Women's Day commemorations coincided with the centenary celebrations of late struggle icon Nontsikelelo Albertina Sisulu. She was one of the organizers of the 1956 anti-pass march. Bureau Report, Afro World View.
And that is all we have for you on this episode of Our Africa. From myself, Matapelo Moloi, and the rest of the team, thank you so much for watching.